And when you find your passion, it ignites you as a person. You just feel awesome. Hello, welcome back to my channel. All right, one of our sisters asked a really great question. She asked, what is the process of remembering techniques while I'm rolling? The short-term memory resides on the outermost layer of your brain. Now, this is your motor memory. What we want to do is take this memory of this technique and literally ingrain it inside your brain into the small brain, the cerebellum. So we want to go from cerebral cortex to cerebellum. This is how you can ride a bike and never forget riding a bike. And this is also how, during my last fight, I literally broke her arm over my head. I had an arm broken over my head. Ulna radius break over my head. I was half conscious and was still able to do jiu-jitsu. This is the process, and we're gonna make this happen for you too, okay? You're gonna be able to do jiu-jitsu half conscious, which is direct evidence that this process worked because I was not able to think. All right, so here is step number one. We're going to get your long-term motor memory in jiu-jitsu going. We're going from declarative, explicit to procedural, implicit memory. We're going from you have to think about everything and actually remember what to do to your body just does it. It just rides the jiu-jitsu bike. When you first learn jiu-jitsu, it's like a fire hose of information coming at you fast. So step number one is ask your professor, ask your coach, hey, do you have any of these techniques filmed and do you have a record collection of them somewhere? Most coaches that I've seen, well, 50%, have an online website where all of their techniques are done in a video instructional. This is like step number one, go ask, because when you first start, sometimes this exists, but it's just not advertised every single day. If your school doesn't have that, then you can do these next steps after class. So the next step is get yourself a notebook, okay? Get yourself a notebook and you are going to learn 1 to 3 different techniques. Which techniques do you learn how to do first? I recommend learning how to do escapes first, because as a beginner, when you do start rolling, that's where you're going to be probably 100% of the time, unless they're letting you work. So it just makes sense to learn a technique that you're actually going to be able to use from day one of learning. You're gonna have a lot of opportunity to practice escapes. And this is what you do. You take your notebook and you either watch the video, or if your school doesn't have videos after class, when an escape technique is shown, write step by step exactly how to do the technique. And I recommend putting one technique, giving yourself a couple of pages. You can draw a picture, like whatever you need to do so that you can come back to it and understand what you wrote, which is going to be a challenge in and of itself. Some tips for that is have language that adequately describes the anatomy in relation to each other. So for example, some terms that are very useful are near side arm, far side arm. You could use opponent's far side arm, my near side arm. So if I had a person standing next to me, their far side arm would be their left arm if we were both facing you. So being able to describe that is super important. Next, this is what you do. You then go back to your notes and see if you can make sense of your notes. If you can't, then redo the process. You could probably, for escapes, there's probably even stuff on YouTube. If your school doesn't have techniques, a library of techniques, then this is what you do. you go to your school and you see if you can pull up that video in your school, because some schools that I've been to, 75% of them have really crappy internet inside, and you do not want to be there about ready to drill, then all of a sudden you have technical difficulties. You want to troubleshoot things before, so make sure you have access to the video and make sure you clearly understand your notes. This is because your next step is asking somebody to drill. I have seen this so many times, I've experienced it, where you ask somebody to drill, you get there, you both look at each other, and then you waste a bunch of time trying to figure out how to do the technique. You want to get there already knowing how to do the technique, that way you can spend the remainder of the time drilling. So what you do during drilling is you look at your step-by-step execution. Like, the more concise you make it, the better. So there's going to be like multiple iterations of you writing this out, drawing this out. This is mental reps. This is all part of the process of getting this inside your brain, right here. Like, that's where it wants to be, right here. You want to go from here to here, okay? So when you are drilling with your partner, you are going to look at your notes, you're going to do the technique, and you are going to do reps of the technique back and forth, back and forth. You are going to try to get as many reps in as possible. And during this process, after you're done doing your 50 reps or whatever, don't think this is your final version of the technique. You still have to get that sucker to work. So what I suggest is, throughout this process, asking an upper belt to give you feedback on what you're doing, because you don't want to get to like 1,000 reps and just keep on doing it wrong. My mistake, and I don't want you to do this, is I literally learned the entire curriculum before really testing things out. So I knew how to do things in my brain, but I had yet to transfer that into skill by testing it while rolling. So my suggestion you can learn from me is learn 1 to 3 techniques. I start with escapes if you're a beginner, then go and test it out on the mat, get feedback from that testing, and then go make your improvements and then drill the improvements. That way you are training your motor memory with the most realistic working version. So this is how you get from your jiu-jitsu not being real, not working, to actually working when somebody's trying to fight you. Because things, when you're drilling, there's no resistance. Or you can start drilling with increased resistance. That's one other way to do it as well. All right, now the first test is going to be, all right, you're with a partner and there's some pressure if you're drilling with a new partner. Like, you feel mental pressure, and that's good because it's testing your ability to recall step by step. One thing that you can do is pay special attention to the first step of the technique. Have you ever given a speech, like a public speech? Have you ever noticed that the first couple of sentences are always the hardest to get out, and then after you feel more comfortable and things flow? Definitely pay close attention to the first 1 or 2 steps of the technique, because when you're under duress, meaning when you're under additional stress from rolling, you will be thankful that you know where to begin, and your mind can then trigger off those first 2 steps. And another really great way to remember these techniques is making the descriptions as vivid and explicit as possible. So some examples, for sumigashi, what I imagined when I first learned it, in order to really ingrain it in my brain, I imagined a geisha dressed as like a sumo wrestler just barreling at me. For a triangle, the first step is you need to get there, like the position needs to be right. You need to get their hand between your legs. So I would be like, okay, step 1, be an aggressive prom date. So these things, like, it makes you laugh, but it also triggers like your brain to fire, and it just makes recalling so much easier, and it makes the process really funny because I'm sitting there laughing about my own little mental prom date joke, and people are like, what is she laughing at? I'm like, I don't know if you want to know. Okay. So after you drill with your partner these few techniques and you've tested it, you can then do mental recall reps throughout the day. That will really help you as well, okay? So then from there, it's just a matter of time before it goes from the outside of your brain to your small brain. One way to increase the speed of this happening is to do reps with increased focus. Like I said in my previous video, this whole book, The Talent Code, all these pages and summary it's just how focused you are when you do it. Like for example, if you were trying to play a piece, it's not just, all right, let me just play the whole piece, and if I mess up, I'm just gonna ignore it and keep on going. It's like, all right, 1, 2, 3 line, did I get that right? Like, let's go to the next bar, did I get that right? Let's go to the next bar, did I get that right? No, I really didn't, let's go back to the beginning. Like, it's really having that intention and that focus that will increase the process speed of it getting to your long-term motor memory from your short-term motor memory, which means you won't have to think about doing it when you do it. Your body will just do it, even if you're half conscious. All right, so thank you so much for watching. If you found this useful, go ahead and subscribe, and until next time.